So just remember that earlier this month that the Biden administration was systematically, a federal court this month found that the Biden administration was systematically and unconstitutionally pressuring big tech to censor dissent. And what did Joe Biden do then? He sued to keep doing it. Representative Jim Jordan, now that the Republicans are in charge of the House, they get to have hearings, and here he found out about the same thing that the government was doing with the Twitter files, telling a social media company to censor and who to censor. They're doing it to Facebook too. Of course, they're doing it here at YouTube. Of course, there's a target on our back. Of course, when I put out the Robert Malone video, they got an order from somewhere, from the White House, from Big Pharma, from whoever, to come after me. They did.
You could have much less subscribers than they would. That's the thing that's shocking.
That's another
from the
thing.
Twitter files. People with not a lot of followers or subscribers.
Yeah.
They'll focus on especially.
So we're going to find out how Facebook also targeted me and our content. And you're going to see it in here. Not me specifically in here, but we were targeted the exact way. And so we would put up truthful content about the vaccine or about COVID, and then it was caught, and it would get flagged as partly untrue, or would get flagged as missing context. And so that would mean that nobody's allowed to share it, and nobody gets to see it. And then they would suppress your account. So they suppressed our Facebook account. Now we're not even allowed to advertise our dates. I'm not even, so like if I'm doing the Toronto, a theater in Toronto, I forget what it's called, the Royal Theater. Now, if they want to, there's a way you can hook up the Royal Theater with the Jimmy Dore page. So when they post something about the Jimmy Dore show coming to their theater, it'll show up on my page too. They won't allow you to do that. They won't allow me to advertise my own shows on Facebook. Why? Because we were right about COVID, and the government and Big Pharma didn't want accurate information about COVID getting out there. So they made it look like I was spreading misinformation. So now probably people who casually know me or people who know me all my life think I was spreading misinformation because Facebook was lying that we were spreading misinformation. We proved every time they did a fact check, it was a fake fact check. It was made up stuff, and it was funded by Bill Gates. Facebook says they use third-party fact checkers. They use third-party fact checkers funded by Bill Gates and the Rockefeller Foundation. That's who does that, okay?
Trusted sources. So this guy, they got some emails and docs. He says never before released internal documents subpoenaed by the Judiciary Committee prove that Facebook and Instagram censored posts and changed their content moderation policies because of unconstitutional pressure from the Biden White House. During the first half of 2021, social media companies like Facebook faced tremendous pressure from the Biden White House, both publicly and privately, to crack down on alleged misinformation. Here's one of the emails. In April 2021, Facebook employees circulated an email for Facebook CEO Mark Zuckerberg and the COO Sheryl Sandberg, writing, "We are facing continued pressure from external stakeholders, including the Biden White House, to remove posts." Wait,
That's what it says right there. We are facing continued pressure from external stakeholders, including the White House and the press, to remove more COVID-19 vaccine discouraging content. Not false, not inaccurate, but just anything that would discourage. So people got mad at me when I said I got vaccine injured. People I know got mad that I would share that information publicly, that I got vaccine injured, because it would discourage other people from getting the vaccine. So you're not supposed to tell the truth. And that's what this is telling too. So even truthful posts about the vaccine were censored.
Wait, look at White House was concerned that the number 3 post was a vaccine discouraging humorous meme.
Yes.
And they call, wow. Wow.
Yes,
wow,
meme. They even censored memes. We're going to show you that. So Jim Jordan then wrote that on April 2021, the email revealed that a Facebook executive informed his team that a Biden administration senior advisor was outraged that Facebook did not remove a particular post. The post, according to Jordan, was a meme of actor Leonardo DiCaprio pointing to a TV with the cap. I'll show it to you. That's it. Did you or a loved one take the COVID vaccine? You may be entitled ...
10 years from now, you will be watching TV and hear this commercial.
You may be entitled to jack shit, is what it's going to say.
Yeah, right. But so the White House told Facebook to take this down. A meme that says. So here.
No wonder comedy had to be censored so early on in the censorship wars. That's one of the first things.
So, in another April 2021 email, Nick Clegg, Facebook's president for global affairs, informed his team at Facebook that Andy Slavitt, a senior advisor to the President Biden, was outraged that Facebook did not remove a particular post. Andy Slavitt was Joe Biden's chief in charge of COVID response. Andy Slavitt, in June of 2021, tweeted out that COVID is so contagious that everybody's going to get it, even if you're vaccinated.
Did he want that removed?
That's what he said. He said that in June of 2021. I saw that tweet. Nobody else in the entire world saw it. And so they thought if everybody got vaccinated, we would get rid of COVID. That was never the case. That was always a lie that was told to you by Fauci and the corporate media. That if everybody got vaccinated, we would get rid of the COVID virus. That was a lie in 2021. It's a lie in 2023. It was always a lie. And people were lied to, and they believed it. They believed it. People, my friends, my good friends who don't know anything about COVID because they didn't look into it, all they did was turn on the TV and they were lied to, and then they thought the lie was the truth, and they thought we were lying. No, you were being lied to by the government. You were being lied to by the corporate press that is owned by Big Pharma, and you're being lied to by Big Pharma.
Well, I just thank God that it turned out to be such a great, safe, and effective vaccine, because that could have been a real disaster.
It could have been. Just got off an hour-long call with Andy Slavitt, Joe Biden's COVID response director. There are some pretty serious and sensitive issues we need to address. And here's a summary. And he gives us all this. And an example, he was outraged. This is at the bottom. Not too strong a word to describe his reaction that we did not remove this post, which was third most highly ranked post in the data set that we sent to him.
Oh, well, I'm sure that'll get rid of the controversy.
And this was it. This was that third most. So Andy Slavitt, direct from the White House, is outraged. And so you don't think that's unconstitutional. You're not supposed to be able to do that. That's pressuring a social media company to censor. Let me go a little bit further. Facebook noted that removing content like that would represent a significant incursion into traditional boundaries of free expression in the United States. But Andy Slavitt, the Biden senior advisor who was worked up over the meme, disregarded the warning and the First Amendment. What happened next? Facebook panicked. In another April 2020 email, Brian Rice, Facebook's vice president of public policy, raised the concern that Slavitt's challenge felt very much like a crossroads for us with the Biden White House in these early days. Jordan noted that Facebook wanted to repair its relationship with the White House to avoid adverse action and provided a document in which someone who appears to be a Facebook staffer wrote, "Given what is at stake here, it would also be a good idea if we could regroup and take stock of where we are in our relations with the White House and our internal methods too." Jordan then wrote that it wasn't just the White House because Facebook also changed its policies in direct response to pressure from Biden's Surgeon General, censoring members of the disinformation dozen. Even though there were 18 of them, they called it disinformation dozen for alliteration because this is propaganda.
RFK is one of those information dirty dozens too as well. They mentioned
exactly, and so but it wasn't just the White House. Facebook also changed its policies in direct response to pressure. There it is, and so here I'll read you some of this. During that last discussion, we agreed to further explore 4 discrete policy options for reducing the prevalence of COVID-19 misinformation on our platforms. And number 1, we're going to designate any assets linked to groups or pages or profiles or accounts which have been removed for COVID misinformation as non-recommendable to users. So anybody who's even linked to these pages are So then it goes, the impact. Number 2, option 2, count COVID misinformation and harm, vaccine widely debunked hoaxes, and COVID repeatedly fact-checked as hoaxes toward misinformation repeat offender status. So that's 1, that's 2, here's 3. Demote COVID or vaccine misinformation rated partly false more strongly. So we currently demote content rated partly false at 50%. We will increase that demotion level to 80% for COVID and vaccine misinformation. So if they declare that something that you said in your article or something you posted is not accurate, they would before suppress it only 50%. Now they're suppressing it 80%, right? Because it's COVID. We are targeting the end of next week for this launch. Number 4, count COVID or vaccine-related URLs that are rated partly false or missing context. That's what they said about me. So when I said that the vaccine didn't stop the spread of the COVID, it didn't stop it because it doesn't.
It doesn't stop it cold. I remember
it doesn't stop it cold.
Cold.
That's what they all said. Fauci said it stopped it cold. Well, it doesn't. That's a lie. The vaccine never stopped the COVID virus cold. That was always a lie, and I reported that. And then Facebook would say missing context.
So they then added the context.
And so they never added the context, but the context that Google and YouTube wants me to add to that is that the vaccine slows the spread and contraction.
Oh, that way you don't clog up the hospitals because the
Hospital
health of the
beds,
hospitals.
Jimmy.
Hospital beds.
Hospital beds.
You want the hospital to buy more beds, Jimmy?
The dumbest argument in the history of mandated medicines is that you have to take a mandated, no long-term studies to take this medicine, not one long-term study. It usually takes 10 years to approve a vaccine. They did it in a couple of months. And you're going to mandate this because there's not enough hospital beds, because capitalists because they're not profitable. Well, what the government should have done was built a bunch of hospital beds.
Maybe dip into the Ukraine money.
Maybe that $100 billion, $200 billion we sent to Ukraine. How many hospital beds do you think $200 billion could buy? I bet a lot of them.
Whether we need it or not.
I bet a lot of them. Bet a lot of them, right? And so that was the dumbest argument in the history of forced medical treatments, that you have to take a forced, untested medical treatment because capitalists don't have enough hospital beds. The answer to that is more hospital beds, not forcing people to take a treatment, an experimental medical treatment with no long-term studies. That's evil.
I'll never forget looking that up about why there's not enough hospital beds. And I found an article
We did look it up. We know exactly why there are not enough hospital beds, Kurt. And the reason why is because they're not profitable.
Right.
It's emergency care, ICU beds. They're not profitable to the hedge funds and the people who run our hospitals now.
Well, they said, is this the one we went on the show? I can't remember. They go, the whole article is about how great this is. And they go, well, that way they can focus on preventative care.
So that's why there weren't. So that's why. And by the way, in 2018, 2019, there weren't enough hospital beds then either. They were setting up triage beds and temporary treatments tents in hospital parking lots from coast to coast in 2018 and 2019 flu season because we don't have enough hospital beds. They've reduced the hospital beds since 1975 in America by like a frickin' couple million.
And that's why we have the best healthcare in the world.
And so the answer is that more hospital beds. Maybe that's the answer, not to force people to take a stupid big pharma garbage thing. So that's what they would do. So they did that to us. They said that we were missing context, even though we weren't missing context. These documents and others that were just produced to the committee prove that the Biden administration abused its powers to coerce Facebook into censoring Americans, preventing free and open discourse on issues of critical public importance. And when are the comedians going to get pissed off about this? I go into comedy clubs now, and every time I go into a comedy club, the comedians that used to be shaming people for trying to get informed about COVID and the vaccine are now talking about dating. They're talking about dating. World War III is about to happen. The biggest censorious campaign by the government ever in the history of our country just happened. They're not talking about any of it. We were lied to from We were lied to about mass herd immunity, natural immunity, prevention, contraction, the severity of COVID. It affects mostly elderly people, much like the flu is what Bill Gates said after he cashed in his stock for $500 million. They were lied about everything. If you said that the virus came from a lab, they called you a racist.
That's my favorite
They
one.
called you a racist.
It was not.
They lied about everything. So here's my last slide, and then I'll bring in Craig. Only after the committee announced its intention to hold Mark Zuckerberg in contempt did Facebook produce any internal documents to the committee, including these documents, which prove that the government pressure was directly responsible for censorship on Facebook. Based on Facebook's newfound commitment to fully cooperate with the committee's investigation, the committee has decided to hold contempt in abeyance. So for now, to be clear, contempt is still on the table and will be used if Facebook fails to cooperate in full. So they were going to throw Mark Zuckerberg in jail for this. And so then Mark Zuckerberg then revealed all the criminality between the Biden White House and Facebook, because that's what that is. That's criminality. So Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg and the Biden administration are criminals, not the people who are posting things about the vaccine on Facebook. Turns out Mark Zuckerberg's the misinformer, Mark Zuckerberg's the liar, and Mark Zuckerberg almost had to go to jail because he wanted to cover up a conspiracy.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing. Let me bring in Craig Pasta. Craig, what would you like to say?
Well, I was just going to comment the fact is that they were only going to release this information after they threatened to subpoena Mark Zuckerberg, and I'm glad you just kind of brought that up because it's kind of crazy. But, you know, when I see this stuff, it's, you know, the first response is always duh, right? Like we're in this business. We know this has been going on for quite some time. You know, I have close to 50 videos on COVID, but none of them are on YouTube. None of them are on Facebook. Why? Because I was part of that whole kind of crew that got, you know, cut off immediately, censored, demonetized, threatening to have my channel taken away. Anytime I put up any information, whether I was pointing out the fact that they were lying and they were manipulating data, the way they were kind of lumping in the unvaccinated with the partially vaccinated. If you were paying attention, you saw the CDC with the various data was putting up that they were putting the unvaccinated together with the partially vaccinated. Therefore, they can control this whole narrative. But if you mentioned one word or iota about that on YouTube or on Facebook, you got 86th. But the question I keep asking myself is the government and big tech one and the same, or are they, you know, two different entities? Because no matter what, you know, Dr. Shiva had proven when Twitter was doing the same thing, they had a direct portal. This is state officials that if you said anything that they didn't like when it came to disinformation, misinformation, if you put up a meme like this one right here, where you're just igniting a spark for people to dive into stuff, they can make a phone call and take you down. So I keep asking the same question to this day. Are they one and the same, or are they two different entities? Because it seems to me the one thing they are trying to do right here is separate themselves from the government. When in fact, when you talk to a lot of people, they say, Facebook and Twitter, they are the government. So many ex-officials work for these companies that it's hard to distinguish between the two.
So we know for sure that Twitter, at the very tip top, was riddled with FBI agents.
Yeah.
Right? And so the bottom line is, just like with Russiagate, just like with the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, the reason why Russiagate was allowed to happen, the reason why COVID censoring is allowed to happen, is because both parties work for the same people, the donor class. And the donor class is Mark Zuckerberg, is Twitter. The donor class is Silicon Valley. The donor class is Wall Street and the military-industrial complex. So they all work. So Mark Zuckerberg gets all his advertising from them. They're all in the same. This is what we've been talking about forever at the show. It's a uniparty. Yeah. And so, yes, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and the government are the same thing because they all have the same interests and they all work for the same people.
Yep.
Didn't we
Jimmy, can I also point out that I think that's very important. Sorry for stepping on you there, Kurt. I'll go just really quickly. I think it is important to point out that they are one and the same way we should be pointing out the establishment is the same, whether it's on the right or the left, the Republicans or the Democrats. You know what I'm saying? This is a systematic problem. I know Jim Jordan's out there saying the Democrats. You know, Sam Bankman-Fried just got, once again acquitted. And everybody's saying the Democrats. Well, the Republicans took money too as well. Donald Trump's White House also had a line of contact to Twitter
That's
and
right.
Facebook, whatnot, to say what they want. So this is a systematic problem. And when they come out with these things, the things that's really, really also like that we shine a light on is the fact that they keep exposing themselves. In the first the Facebook files that Jordan just put out, it also talked about Tucker with a video that they demoted. Now, demoted is the code word for shadow banning.
Yes.
So they just keep exposing themselves more and more as this stuff comes out. But this is like information we should already, know. I approach these things, Jimmy, sometimes I'm so disheartened because it's like, yeah, they keep doing this stuff, but what are we going to do about it? Is it ever going to change?
So this is the big. Go ahead, Kurt.
Remember
what?
we did the story about the guy, I can't remember what the title is, the guy at Facebook who's basically deciding family standards or some nonsense. He's a CIA guy.
Oh yeah, the ex-CIA guy.
And they keep cutting to him
Yeah,
with his wedding ring.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember what his title is, but
I'm sure it's like chief disinformation officer or something at Facebook, and he came directly from the CIA.
public-private partnership.
And oh no, I forgot my point.
Oh, sorry.
You're having a Mitch McConnell moment.
Sorry, I sandbagged you.
You sandbagged me.
Way to go, Kurt.
I don't remember what I was going to say, motherfucker. All right, well. All right, so there it is. Now and when are people going to get upset? Kurt, do you see anybody doing jokes about it? That the government was censoring people for questioning Big Pharma? Like that you would think every comedian in the world would have a bit about it by this time.
Why? Most of them are on Big Pharma pills.
And they're just talking about dating. They don't talk about it at all.
Okay, well, they're not going to have jokes. When I talk to my friends that I haven't seen, like in New York, most of them are on new pharma drugs that they're like the mental ones, or Ozempic is a big one.
Right.
Especially in New York. And that's like a classic medicated town. I mean, so is LA, obviously, but yeah.
I remember what I wanted to say now. So that's the way the government helps censor, right? That's the way the government censors with Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. But also in there is the press helps censor. How does the press censor? Well, you get like an asshole like from Huffington Post or the Daily Beast or the or New York Times, and they call Facebook and they say, I can't believe we're doing a story on these posts that you're leaving up that are toxic and you're going to have blood on your hands and you're killing people. Remember Joe Biden says that the social media was killing people?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember when he said that. And so what the press will do, these scumbags in the press, was they'll call social media and they'll say, we're doing a story on you leaving these posts up. So they immediately take those posts down. And so the biggest push for censorship, ironically, is coming from the press. Comes from the people who consider themselves journalists are the ones who want censorship the most, because then they're out of a job, because people like me can report stuff that they're not allowed to report because they're sponsored by Big Pharma. And so they want us censored because we're competition.
Well, most of these journalists too, most of them, I assume the majority, are not even in on what they're doing. They're that big of losers.
You're correct.
And group, like just
so
cows.
If you have a job at NBC, if you have a job at Fox News, if you have a job at CNN or New York Times or the Washington Post, it's because you were groomed to have that job since you were in kindergarten. You never colored outside the lines, and you crossed the T's and dotted the I's, and you never got in trouble. Those are the kind of people who are sitting in editorial meetings at news corporations and news companies. The people who have been groomed to follow the fucking rules since the day they were born, and they did. Because if you color outside the lines, you don't get invited to NBC's editorial meeting. That's why.
And they're using the same rhetoric, right? Like the same, what are you, crazy? Whether it be Anderson Cooper with Cornel West, like, what are you, Putin? Oh, come on. Or, Sean Hannity did it with RFK. And even Piers Morgan did it with Jackson Hinkle, right? It's like, what are you, nuts? Are you kidding me? Putin's a killer. He's nuts. He's crazy. You're an idiot. You are crazy for speaking up for the Russian Federation defending its own borders. You're nuts. He's a murderer. Well, same rhetoric, same playbook.
I'll never forgive Putin myself for lying about weapons of mass destruction and invading a sovereign nation.
But he did end COVID. So come on.
Come see our live shows. We're going to be in Chicago, Rosemont, Las Vegas, Salt Lake City, New York City, Pottstown, Pennsylvania, Stamford, Toronto, Toledo, Detroit, St. Louis, and more. Go to jimmydore.com for a link for those tickets.